and confirmed by fusion researcher Richard Holt, who maintains a list of amateur scientists who have achieved fusion at home. Because Jackson achieved fusion at 1:30 p.m., just 2 hours before his birthday, at 3:38 p.m., he was technically 12 years old, and therefore also received a Guinness World Records title for his incredible work. But his story would prove far from over, as one Saturday he was woken up by 2 FBI agents who made a sweep of his house with a Geiger counter to make sure there was no radiation detected from Jackson's experiments. Hey, welcome to Inspired Earth. I hope you guys are having a great day. We're going to be talking about children who have made nuclear reactors, and then we'll talk about Karen Silkwood and her story. So we're just going to dive straight in. And I've been wanting to talk about this one for a long time, or these sets of stories. I think some of them we've already talked about, but it's fine. We can put them all together and read it again, or read some more about them. And to start off, I think I have three kids, maybe 4, I think 3. But David Charles Hahn, sometimes called Radioactive Boy Scout and the Nuclear Boy Scout, was an American nuclear radiation enthusiast who attempted to build a homemade nuclear reactor at the age of 17. Hahn was born October 30th, 1976 in Royal Oak, Michigan. His father, Ken Hahn, was a mechanical engineer. His mother, Patty Hahn, suffered from alcoholism and was diagnosed with depression and schizophrenia, and sent to the mental hospital when David was 4. His parents divorced when he was 9, and his father gained custody. He had a stepmother, Kathy Missig, and stepsister, Christina, after his father remarried. David's step-grandfather, John Sims, gave the Golden Book of Chemistry experiments and encouraged his experiments in chemistry and science. David mowed other people's lawns to help fund his experiments. With one experiment, he created chloroform, and as the book encouraged him to sniff the chemical, he did so and was passed out for more than an hour, according to his recollection, which seems incredibly dangerous. I can't believe they would recommend somebody to do that. That's crazy. David also loved to build fireworks and model rockets, which he altered with his own designs. As the experiments at home were becoming a problem, increasingly dangerous, David was encouraged by his father to join the Boy Scouts to provide discipline and distraction from his scientific endeavors. He was fascinated by chemistry and also attempted amateur chemistry stuff, and it talks about and he tried to collect samples of every element on the periodic table, including radioactive ones. He later received a merit badge in atomic energy and became fascinated with the idea of creating a breeder in his home. Hahn diligently amassed radioactive material by collecting small amounts from household materials, such as americesium from smoke detectors, thorium from camping lanterns, mantles, radium from old clocks he had obtained from antique stores, and tritium from gun sites. His reactor was a bored-out block of lead and used lithium from $1,000 worth of purchased batteries to purify the thorium ash using a Bunsen burner. Hahn ultimately hoped to create a breeder reactor using low-level isotopes to transform samples of thorium and uranium into fissile isotopes. His homemade neutron source was often incorrectly referred to as a nuclear reactor, but it emitted measurable levels of radiation, likely exceeding 1,000 times normal background radiation. Alarmed by this, David Hahn began to dismantle his experiments, but in a chance encounter, police discovered his activities. I think, if I remember correctly, they just stumbled into the garage somehow. They were looking for something, or somehow I can't remember how, that somehow they ended up there and went into the garage, and they were like, what is this? Alarmed by this, David Hahn began to dismantle the experiments, but in a chance police encounter, they discovered his activities, which triggered a federal radiological emergency response team involving the FBI and Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which, geez, that would be embarrassing. On June 26, 1995, the EPA, having designated Hahn's mother's property a Superfund site, hazardous material cleanup site, dismantled the shed and placed its contents in steel barrels, which were later buried as low-level radioactive waste in Utah. Unbeknownst to officials, his mother, fearful that she would lose her house if the full extent of radiation was known, had already collected the majority of the radioactive material David Hahn had hidden in the house and thrown it away in the conventional garbage. Hahn refused medical evaluation for radiation exposure. The EPA scientists believe Hahn's life expectancy may have been shortened due to the exposure to radioactivity, particularly since he spent long times in the small enclosed shed with relatively large amounts of radioactive material and only minimal safety precautions. But he refused their recommendation that he be examined at the Enrico Fermi nuclear generating station. This was also probably from a fear that they would use the results of such examination to further his trouble. Hahn became depressed after the scandal, a problem exacerbated by the breakup by his then-girlfriend and suicide of his mother in 1996. While he did graduate from high school, he lacked any direction plans thereafter. His father and stepmother first encouraged him to attend Macomb Community College. He enrolled in metallurgy. Eventually, he was encouraged to join the military. He enlisted in the Navy and assigned a nuclear power aircraft carrier, the USS Enterprise, as an undesignated seaman, pay grade E3. After a 4-year tour, he achieved interior communications specialist with the rank of petty officer, 3rd class, pay grade E4. After his time on the USS Enterprise, Hahn enlisted in the Marine Corps and stationed in North Carolina. He eventually received the rank of Lance Corporal and was honorably discharged on medical grounds and returned to Michigan. FBI investigation. On April 23, 2007, the FBI received a lead regarding Hahn's alleged possession of a second neutron source in his freezer. Contacted via telephone, Hahn insisted that he was not in possession of radioactive material. The FBI decided no imminent terrorist threat was present, but decided to attempt a personal interview. During an interview at an FBI office on May 16, 2007, investigators' questions touched on a variety of topics, such as flyers that Hahn had distributed promoting his book and upcoming film, theft of tires and rims from a vehicle prior to his Navy service, a diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia, and a few less significant topics. It sounds like they're trying to blackmail him. FBI agents then interviewed an individual whose identity was not released, who stated that Hahn was using cocaine heavily, was not taking his prescribed medication, was paranoid about people that he claimed had the ability to shock his genitals with their mind, I guess like a psychic attack or something, and had possibly been visited by prostitutes. The individual also stated that he believed Hahn was still trying to build a reactor and was collecting radium. He stated that he did not believe Hahn had any intentions of hurting anyone, but was concerned about his mental state. Larceny of smoke detectors. On August 1st, 2007, Hahn was charged with larceny in Clinton Township, Michigan, for allegedly removing a number of smoke detectors from the halls of his apartment building. His intention was to obtain americium from them. In his mugshot, his face was covered in sores, which investigators believe could have been from exposure to radioactive materials, or, if this guy's doing drugs, then he may also have sores from that too. I mean, that's kind of a jump, but whatever. During a circuit court hearing, Hahn pleaded guilty to attempted larceny of a building. The court's online docket said prosecutors recommended that he be sentenced to time served and enter an inpatient treatment facility. Under terms of the plea, the original charge of larceny of a building would be dismissed. Scheduled for October 4th, he was sentenced to 90 days in jail for attempted larceny. Court records said that his sentence would be delayed 6 months while Hahn underwent medical treatment in the psychiatric unit of Macomb County Jail. On September 27, 2016, at the age of 39, Hahn died in his hometown of Shelby Charter Township, Michigan. His death was ruled an accidental result of intoxication from the combined effects of alcohol, fentanyl, and dephenhydramine, whatever. The medical examiner's report indicated a blood alcohol concentration of 0.404 milligrams. So yeah, then it says that there was like a bunch of shows and books and stuff written with him as in mind. So now we'll move on. That's like the original one. It's kind of an infamous story because he kind of had a bad reaction, but it's, he was like a genius. I think it also kind of shows the link between sometimes some of these child prodigies also suffer from mental illness. It sounds like he was, fit into that category, but not all of them do. So let's move on to Taylor Wilson, and this is from helena.org. Taylor Wilson is a 24-year-old inventor, scientist, and entrepreneur at the time of this writing. At age 14, in his home state of Arkansas, Taylor became the youngest person in history to produce nuclear fusion. He hadn't slowed down since. Wilson is currently working in medicine, nuclear security, chemistry, and nuclear fission. In his reactor in his parents' garage, he was able to reach a temperature of 40 times as hot as the sun. Immediately, Taylor was all over the press. Numerous stories were written about his breakthrough, including popular science article, The Boy Who Played with Fusion, which subsequently became a book. After a bidding war in Hollywood, Fox Studios / Chernin bought the story's rights to adapt into a future film with Jeff Nichols is writing and directing. I don't know anything about that. I mean, somebody needs to Google that. I'm not very good with pop culture, but I've never heard of that movie, especially not Jeff Nichols. Or is it Jeff Nicholson or Jeff Nichols? I guess Jeff Nichols. I was thinking somebody else. Taylor has won numerous awards, including first place at Intel International Science and Engineering Fair and the Intel Young Scientist Award. His project, Countering Nuclear Terrorism, Novel Active and Passive Techniques for Detecting Nuclear Threats, caught the attention of the U.S. government and military. He went on to develop several groundbreaking nuclear technologies with applications in security, medicine, and energy. He is also the founder of several companies which commercializes these inventions. One of his earliest inventions was a radiation detector, which typically costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. Taylor's detector costs only hundreds of dollars and is used in ports and containers around the world. They have a picture of him and Obama together. It's interesting. Here, get this. Get ready for this, guys. When I first saw this absolutely blew my mind. In 2012, Taylor was awarded a Peter Thiel Fellowship where he received a $100,000 grant to forego college and focus on his inventions. He has spoken about technology, science, and nuclear security around the world, including twice at TED Talks, NATO, presidential libraries, the United Nations, Google, SpaceX, and many more. He's been featured on 60 Minutes and was included on an energy segment on Vice on HBO alongside Elon Musk. So they put this guy up along with Elon Musk. The Peter Thiel Fellowship. Wow. Peter Thiel is the billionaire who has manufactured J.D. Vance. And he also sponsored J.D. Vance in a similar way. And he's the one that wants to build these techno cities in Greenland. Remember Trump was saying we were going to invade Greenland. Peter Thiel wants to build techno cities in Greenland that are futurist ethno cities that are inhabited by test tube, white nationalist, hyper-intelligent babies. That's the vision. That's what Peter Thiel, and I know this sounds so out there and sci-fi, but this is actually a real thing. I need to make an episode all about that, and I've been meaning to, but I've just been trying to figure out how and to tie in a whole bunch of different stuff into that, because this is really big. Like, even here, I just stumbled upon this randomly. In 2012, he was awarded the Peter Thiel Fellowship. That's how long ago Peter Thiel has been working on this stuff. Peter Thiel and Elon Musk. Remember in the previous episodes when I was talking about how it seems like with fusion, only the big tech, broligarch type figures are the only people that have access to this. And you see here, Peter Thiel came and swallowed him up. He's like, no, don't go to college. You're mine now. And you're going to do all this stuff for us. And the kid is just a kid. He doesn't know. Nobody knew who Peter Thiel was back then. At least I didn't. I mean, I'm sure there were some people, but at least Peter Thiel's starting to be exposed now. But he's one of the people behind Palantir that's trying to make stablecoin, working with the CIA, that's involved with J.D. Vance, that wants to do all this ethnic cleansing and wants to go into like fiefdoms and smaller city-states, going back to city-states and tech, like that are highly specialized and technological, that can withstand climate change. It's just very out there stuff, but they're racist type people. And these are the people who are in charge of all of our big tech. And also probably the people that are looking at all of this ET technology or this like behind the scenes technology as well. They're starting to get this stuff. And that's the plan. But this, when I stumbled upon this Peter Thiel thing, dude, that blew my mind. Absolutely crazy. If you don't know about this guy, you need to know more about him. Absolutely bizarre. Just, you can't make this stuff up. But, so let's keep on reading. Currently, Taylor is building a small nuclear fission reactor that has the potential to fundamentally disrupt the energy landscape. With a passion for the history of science and technology, Taylor's mission is to inspire a new generation of scientists and engineers to dream big and use technology to make the world a better place. And this is like an old article. It's like a 10-year-old article, at least. Absolutely insane. Imagine if we actually would have had a world that did that. And instead they just trapped this kid, I bet. And like, I'm sure he does a lot. And they also gave him a lot of money to where he can do stuff. But ideologically, he's working for them. He's working for the dark side. And he doesn't even know it, I don't think. Or may have some clue. I'm not sure. But this is 2013. So let's listen to a little bit of this guy. And I have to speed it up to try to avoid copyright. So let's listen to this for a little bit. It's going to be pretty short.
Oh, well, you launch this thing and it's radioactive into space, and what about accidents? But we launch plutonium batteries all the time. Everybody was really excited about Curiosity, and that had this big plutonium battery on board that has plutonium-238, which actually has a higher specific activity than the low-enriched uranium fuel of these molten salt reactors, which means that the effects would be negligible because you launch it cold. And when it gets into space is where you actually activate this reactor. So I'm really excited. I think that I've designed this reactor here that can be an innovative source of energy, provide power for all kinds of neat scientific applications, and I'm really prepared to do this. I graduated high school in May, and I decided that I was going to start up a company to commercialize these technologies I've developed, these revolutionary detectors for scanning cargo containers and these systems to produce medical isotopes. But I want to do this, and I've slowly been building up a team of some of the most incredible people I've ever had the chance to work with, and I'm really prepared to make this a reality. And I think that looking at the technology, this will be cheaper than or the same price as natural gas, and you don't have to refuel it for 30 years, which is an advantage for the developing world. And I'll just say one more maybe philosophical thing to end with, which is weird for a scientist, but I think there's something really poetic about using nuclear power to propel us to the stars, because the stars are giant fusion reactors. They're giant nuclear cauldrons in the sky. The energy that I'm able to talk to you today, while it was converted to chemical energy in my food, originally came from a nuclear reaction. And so there's something poetic about, in my opinion, perfecting nuclear fission and using it as a future source of innovative energy. So
So here he's talking about small nuclear fission reactors, which is what my last episode was kind of about as well, the SMRs. So this is a kid talking about 12 years ago, SMRs. And he'd figured it out just on his own. And did you hear him when he said, this is a perfect opportunity for developing nations? Oh, you sweet summer child. You think that Peter Thiel, the guy who gave you all this money, is going to let you develop third world? I mean, I would like that. I would love that. But that's obviously, has it happened? Has it happened? It's been 12 years since this kid had this dream and got that money, and has it happened? That shows right there that Peter Thiel is a black hole of energy and money, and that and technology, and that people like him are hoarding this stuff, and that kids like this want to give it out. He wanted to get it out. He just said it, and it still hasn't happened. Absolutely insane. Instead, they had him working on national security stuff. Okay, and so here we have, that was Taylor Wilson, right? So here we have Jamie Edwards, who has almost no information out there about him, hardly, other than this video, which is 11 years old. So this is 2 years after the one we just watched. How I Built a Nuclear Reactor at the Age of 13.
Nuclear power. I guess this is what most people think of when it comes to nuclear power. Well, for me, this is what I think of. Or more specifically, this. But before I tell you about that, let me tell you how all this started. Even as a young kid, I was always asking questions. Questions to my mum, my dad, teachers, but eventually they weren't able to answer my questions anymore. So I turned to the internet to find some answers. It was on the internet that I came across this guy, Taylor Wilson, who had created nuclear fusion at 14. And I was like, wow, fusion in the back garden. I had to find out more. So while searching online, I came across fusor.net, a group of amateur scientists who were building these Farnsworth fusers. And it was there that I worked out that it was actually possible for me to build one of these. I figured it had cost around £2,000. Slight problem, I didn't have £2,000. And I was going to have to raise some money myself. So I started writing to some local nuclear labs, big engineering companies, universities. But you know what? For some reason, they didn't want to give £2,000 to a 13-year-old trying to build a nuclear reactor. No idea why. So instead, I asked my school's science teacher if she could help me with my project. She suggested we try the head teacher. So after a Dragon's Den-style pitch to Mr. Hogan, I managed to persuade him to part with £2,000. So, armed with the school credit card, I turned to eBay. I bought parts from all over the world. Power supplies from the USA, resistors from Hong Kong, and vacuum pumps from Lithuania. I built this, my fusion reactor. So, however, I couldn't get everything from eBay. Their terms and conditions were a little restrictive. Even the specialist gas suppliers seemed concerned. They wanted to know why exactly a 13-year-old schoolboy from Lancashire wanted 10 litres of deuterium gas. Anyway, this is the neutron detector. It's a key part of the reactor. I use it to tell me if the reaction has actually happened or not. However, they're not easy to get hold of. I had to call everyone I knew to find someone who might know someone who might just happen to know someone else who actually has one of these. In the end, a local university lent me this one. The high-voltage power supply was one of the most expensive parts, but when it arrived from the USA, it didn't work. Even to this day, I haven't figured out why. But luckily, a local switchgear company not only lent me the kit to use it, they also taught me how to use it safely. There's so much about safety. Apparently, there was some concern about letting a 13-year-old loose with a nuclear reactor in school. I'm not sure why. One of the conditions was I had to be over 2 meters away from the reactor while it was in operation. Slight problem. You see these arms? There's no way I could reach. But thanks to the school's tech department and some complex engineering, we made these. These are indeed broom handles with bits of plastic super glued to the end so I could operate the controls from a distance. There was also the problem that I might touch the reactor while it was in operation. So I made a high-tech chicken wire cage and put it around the reactor so I couldn't touch it. There was also the problem about high-energy neutron radiation coming off the reactor. So this was my solution. My sister's fish tanks. Minus the fish, of course. We filled them with the boron solution to act as a moderator and absorber of the neutrons. And finally, just in case I managed to electrocute myself, we made this. It is indeed a hook made of old bike inner tubes in case I managed to electrocute myself and needed rescuing. So, the big day had come. I was feeling calm until the press started turning up. I might have mentioned a little something to Mr. Hogan about the possibility of some PR for the school. I was only thinking the local paper, but press from all over the place turned up. So, I had everything set up, the cameras were ready, my hook was at the ready, and then we switched on the reactor. The first thing I did was pump down the chamber and apply the high voltage. That's when I achieved this, plasma, a key step in producing fusion. I played with this for a while until I was confident I was getting the balance right between power and vacuum, and then all I had to do was up the voltage and add in a tiny bit of deuterium gas. I achieved this. A reading on the neutron detector. I'd done it. It was amazing. All my hard work had paid off. But now, as a young scientist, I now need to go back to the experiment and do it again. Because as you all know, in science, we need to repeat our experiments and duplicate our results. And that's my current focus. But none of this would have happened if it wasn't for a science teacher who believed in the dreams of her pupils and a head teacher that was willing to take a risk to give me the opportunity. So to any young scientists out there, no matter how young, nothing is ever too big for you to try. All you need is curiosity, determination, and an open mind. Thank you.
So he got inspired by the last guy we just watched. So this is like a chain of inspiration, which is pretty fascinating. Here we have The Guardian, which is a 10-year-old article. Jamie Edwards made history when he built a working nuclear fusion reactor at home. This was pretty hard to find. I don't know why I had to dig so hard to find this. He said that the moment came on March 5th last year when Jamie Edwards, then 13, flicked the switch and waited with a bated breath. Seeing the purple glow was the best part. As the neutron detector confirmed it, Edward knew he'd become the world's youngest fusioneer. What I've done, it's the exact same process that happens on the sun. Basically, by creating a vacuum in a chamber, filling it with deuterium, a heavy isotope of hydrogen, and then running an extremely high voltage through it, Edward was able to encourage two hydrogen atoms to smash together into each other and fuse to create helium. It's the process that keeps stars from going. And this is the same thing, well, it's not the same thing, but a similar process as what the Quantum Fusion Corporation article said that they were doing, was a similar type of thing. Only I think they said they were using low voltage, which was the most bizarre part. It's this process that keeps the stars going, says Edward. So I've recreated the same process in a box about the size of a jar. You could call it a star in a jar. Sitting with Edwards, a pupil at Pennyworth Priory Academy in Preston, you'd be hard-pressed to guess at his achievements. Under the surface, though, there's just a hint. He's become accustomed to his media appearances, as well he might. At the age of 14 now, he's already an old hand at CERN, given TED Talks, and appeared at the David Letterman Show. And that's all within the last year. With ambitions to become an engineer or nuclear physicist, there seems to be little that can hold him back. When he was younger, he'd trawl car boot sales and charity shops for uranium glass. It's just green glass, but if you put a UV light on it, it will glow bright alien green. And it's sort of radioactive because it's the uranium that gives it its color. He saved up to buy a Geiger counter from the US. But it was watching videos on YouTube that eventually led him to giving a pitch to his headmaster for the funding to build a nuclear fusion reactor in his laboratory. After securing €2,000, he scoured eBay for parts to piece together, and with a little help from local universities and labs, he finally completed it 6 months later. His headmaster was concerned about safety. There was a chance that I could be electrocuted by high voltage power, and then probably the chance of the vacuum chamber imploding because of the forces on it. But quite a minimal aspect to it was the radiation. And yeah, so we've already heard all of that, except for I was thinking that maybe I could make a handheld laser cutter. So I've been looking into really high-powered lasers, which is another method of fusion that I've talked about, like a ion laser fusion. That's what they were saying, that they could just start and stop the reaction with a laser. So like instantly stopping the fusion reaction. Just in case, I mean, I don't know if anything could happen, but I don't think so, but they could stop it instantly, which is interesting. And here we go. Article was published a year ago. This is on newsforkids.net. 16-year-old student builds nuclear fusion reactor September 4th, 2004. Cambridge, England. Cesar Mensorini, which I'm pretty sure I've already read about this kid before on the podcast, but it's worth mentioning again. Recently graduated from the sixth form school, which is equivalent to high school, in England with excellent grades, but he was probably more excited about the success he had a previous year, building a working nuclear fusion reactor at the age of 16. Cesar grew up in Italy, but he's been going to school at Cardiff Sixth Form College in Cambridge, England for the past 2 years. His focus was on math, chemistry, and physics. And it shows him working on a computer. Cesar's mother is an architect and his father is an electronic engineer. As a child, Cesar became interested in electronics. He loved to experiment. He learned to program computers and devices like the Arduino and Raspberry Pi. He also worked with a 3D printer. At Cardiff, Cesar was allowed to choose an extra area of study. After seeing a video about someone building a fusion reactor, notice how this is all just from people watching videos on YouTube. Cesar decided he wanted to build one too. The school wasn't so excited about the idea, but Cesar worked to persuade his teachers. Finally, after a complete safety review with an extra advisor offering to help him out, the school agreed. And this is a picture of like different parts of it. Here, let me zoom it in for anybody watching, because it's probably really tiny. Cesar was a strong student, but his regular classes weren't teaching him how to build a fusion reactor. To learn this, he spent countless hours doing research, looking up information on the internet, and watching videos. We're living in an age where everything is available just by searching. When he faced a problem, he would read, watch 10 or 15 videos, and then go to tackle the problem. He also joined a website where he got advice from scientists with more experience. Step by step, working long hours with his physics teacher and advisor, Cesar built the reactor. Last June, at the very end of school year, the reactor was finished. And this is him smiling with it all done. Looks pretty well done. One important step to building a fusion reactor is to achieve plasma. That's when atoms are so excited and heated up that they gain or lose electrons, creating a glowing gas called plasma. But Cesar still couldn't get the reactor to achieve plasma. A special piece of metal that was supposed to fit perfectly in the device didn't fit well. The seal kept leaking. Finally, Cesar and others decided to try filing down the piece of metal by hand. That failed 4 times. The team was almost ready to give up, but the next time the seal held and the reactor worked, creating plasma. Cesar would barely believe his eyes. It worked, he cried excitedly. And I guess this is a picture, the picture of plasma seen through the viewport on Cesar's fusion reactor. It's just like a circular piece of metal with like nuts on it and purple glow in the middle. It's interesting. Over a year has passed since then. Cesar continued to improve the reactor. He's built complicated devices to control the pressure and to better see and understand what's going on inside the reactor. He's one of the youngest students to have built such an advanced fusion reactor, but for Cesar, it wasn't just about the reactor, it was also about learning by doing things and making connections with other people doing similar things. College is the next step for Cesar, perhaps in England, perhaps in Italy. No matter where he goes, he'll probably continue to change people's ideas about how much young people can achieve. One problem Cesar faced was money. The school approved his project, but they only gave him 25% of the money needed. Cesar says not having enough money meant he had to be very creative, and as a result, he wound up learning much more. Which you kind of hear that in other cases as well. That you have to be more crafty and creative when you're more poor and have less resources. And you end up being smarter as a result of it. 12-year-old boy who achieved nuclear fusion in his playroom got a visit from the FBI, published 28th January 2025.